I think at a certain point, I started to believe that the Eras Tour was just going to last forever. Taylor ended the tour last night in Vancouver. It was a triumphant finish to the biggest tour of all time. Today on the podcast, how the Eras Tour changed everything for Taylor Swift and for the music industry. I'm Alamin Abdul-Mahmoud, and this is Commotion. Look, it took 150 shows in 5 continents and millions and millions and millions of friendship bracelets to get to this moment. But the end of the Eras Tour is here.
We get to spend the last night of the Eras Tour with 60,000 beautiful people in Vancouver. I want to thank every single one of you for being a part of the most thrilling chapter of my entire life to date.
That is Taylor Swift in Vancouver last night, a final show of the epic Eras Tour. Look, I gotta be honest with you. If you're a regular listener to the show, then you know that we talk a lot about Taylor Swift, and you know that we've talked a lot about this very specific tour because you know what? It has lasted a while. A lot has happened. The tour has lasted a year and a half, and now it's over. And we get to talk about it again. Get to talk about it again, maybe one last time. Look, I think it's fair to say this is a tour that changed everything. It changed the concert industry. It changed the relationship between pop stars and their audiences. And I think it changed Taylor Swift herself. So today on the podcast, we're going to get into all of those things and all those dimensions with people who have been there from the very start. Ashley Murphy is here. Suzy Exposito is here. And Kyle Mumma is also here. He's a Swiftie who created an app called Swift Alert that became a vital part of the Eras Tour experience. Kyle and Aisling and Suzy, welcome to the show, everybody. How's it going?
Hi.
Hello.
Good morning, Almi.
Good morning.
Kyle, I hear in your voice the emotional drain of someone who was there last night because you were at the very last show of the tour. Tell us about the vibe. Tell us about the vibe and the energy being there for the very final show of this historic tour.
It was incredible. It felt like a celebration in a way that some of the other shows maybe didn't feel quite the same way. We were lucky enough to be at opening night. Opening night was this kind of, I don't know, confusing, shocking, wonderful thing where we were all.
You mean
just
opening
kind
night of the tour, like at the very start?
Opening night of the tour in Glendale. Yeah.
Wow, you bracketed the tour. You went to the first show and the last show.
Yes.
I'd love to see it.
Yes. So opening night, we're all sitting there wondering, like, we're 3 hours in. She hasn't even played Midnights yet. Like, what's happening, right? It was just like it was just kind of this confusing, wonderful experience. Yeah. We went in Paris as well, Paris night 3, and at that point in the tour, it was like we're all waiting to see what she does next, what she announces next, what new outfit she pulls out, right? Like it was just kind of this. We're just experiencing all of these new things she's throwing at us, and then last night it felt like a real moment to just appreciate everything that this tour has been, from Gracie talking about everything
Gracie
Taylor has meant to her,
yeah.
Gracie Abrams. Yeah. But I think from that moment on in the night, it just felt like everyone in the building understood the kind of gravity of the moment, the importance of this tour, what it meant to be there on the last night. And it just felt like this real celebratory atmosphere as we kind of recognized the end of an era.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is a tour that has spanned so long, right? 21 months, that it has given us, first of all, different Taylor Swift albums. It has given us, a set list change in the middle of it, all these outfit changes, all the ways that sort of she even approaches, and also a bunch of Taylor's versions releases while she's been on tour. So a lot of significant moments in her career, Aisling, that we kind of watched as this tour has kind of happened. You wrote this wonderful review in the Toronto Star of the show that you went to in Toronto, which I should say, I was next to you at that show. I was like one seat over watching you lose your mind at that show. But also, that was not your first show either. You went to Nashville. I think you went to the Rain show in Nashville, right? Which is like the one that got rained out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Which is now like a stuff of sort of myth and legend, which is like a tour has gone on long enough that certain shows have become legendary in and of, themselves. Now, do you want to talk a little bit about like what it was like seeing like kids seeing their hero for the first time as they watched the show? What made the Eras concert experience what it was?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think people have been quick to say that the Eras Tour is a concert for everyone, and that's always felt very kind of marketing-y to me. But then you go to the Eras Tour And that's actually true. I mean, you're seeing parents of all generations, you have 20 somethings losing their mind. You're seeing kids who in some cases might be at their first concert, and the Eras Tour now has to live up to that forever, which is so magical. I mean, I was there for night one of Toronto, and I had bought merch, and my hands were overflowing with things. And I put down all my stuff, my wallet, my phone, my keys, and I fully left the stadium for like 5-10 minutes and no one touched my stuff. It was still there. And I can't really think of another concert where it really is that much of a community. Like everyone's just there to have a good time. No one who's there is a bad actor, most likely. Like it really just feels like you're hanging out with, tens of thousands of your best friends. It's amazing.
I will say, like, one experience that really sticks out for me as I watched an Eras Tour show is, the parent who was kind of like behind me, whose child couldn't really see anything. And that parent sort of brought their kid to the end of the aisle. And then basically everyone who was as a part of the aisle was taking care of that child to make sure that they had a good time. And the parent just like trusted that all of the people there had their kid's best interest at heart. It was like the most beautiful kind of atmosphere you could be in. Aisling, we got to talk about some of the big sort of defining moments of this tour, because I think there have been a few. What sticks out for you as you kind of think about the big Eras Tour moments?
It feels crazy to even say something like this, but like I remember where I was when she came out in a new Reputation bodysuit. I wasn't at that concert.
We sound deluded when you say that, right? You understand that like people who are not Swifties are like, what do you mean? But also, do you want to talk about why that moment was a big deal? Because it signaled something. Go ahead, talk about it.
Oh, this is mental illness, like at its finest, for sure. But so, I mean, throughout the Eras Tour, she's made a big point of lots of outfits for all the different eras. I mean, I feel like she had like 10 different gold spangled dresses for Fearless or whatever, different bodysuits for Lover. With Reputation, for most of the tour, she only had the one outfit, and it became kind of iconic. It was the black bodysuit with the red snake going up it.
Yeah.
And it became this thing sort of within the fandom of like, is she washing it? Like, is she gonna change?
It was tattered. It was going through it.
Yeah. It was.
Yeah, it's like this thing is falling apart. The snake head is coming off. I saw something online where people were like, is the snake shedding its skin to a new era situation? It was not. She was just wearing it a lot. But she came out in a new Reputation bodysuit with a gold snake. And the world lost its mind. I lost my mind because I think we're all wondering, like, does that mean there's a new Taylor's version coming out? Is there some other surprise in store as indicated by this new bodysuit? But no, I mean, stuff like that, it's so fun to follow along with, like, oh my God, wait, Travis Kelce is on stage. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Throughout the tour, there's been these stunts that they are stunts, but they also feel so artistically motivated, creatively motivated, where it's like, yeah, this is unhinged, but of course she's doing that right now. And of course I need to know about it in real time. This is fantastic.
Suzy, the thing that Aisling is getting at there is the biggest change that I've noticed when it comes to how the Eras Tour maybe changed how I think about the music industry in general, which is to say that like every show was an opportunity to speak to people outside the stadium in ways that like I don't think of tours that way. I think of tours as like the artist going in and they're having a conversation with that city, and then whatever happens in that city sort of remains in that city, and then you kind of move on to go to the next place. But there was something about the way that the Eras Tour kind of moved and the way that Taylor used the fact that everyone was paying attention to all these details, like the outfits, like the snake shedding its skin, maybe, question mark, to begin speaking to people outside the stadium and maybe crafting a narrative about the tour that you didn't need to be inside the thing in order to be conversant in the thing. And so you saw the show. You went to one of the LA shows that got filmed for the Eras Tour experience. Do you want to talk about what it was like for you going to that show? What stayed with you?
That show was fantastic. I ended up sitting next to Heidi Montag and Spencer Pratt of The Hills fame.
Flex. Incredible.
And I swapped friendship bracelets with them. You can read it about it in the Los Angeles Times.
Big day.
But yeah, big day. They gave me like karma beads, like crystals, so the vibes in LA were extremely LA. Yeah. But on a larger scale, I think like that summer was just such a banner summer for women. And I think that, it's messed up to think about what's happening now in the US, but last summer, you know, think about how the Barbie movie had come out. Beyonce was also on tour. Yeah. It was just like that summer was just this huge celebration of womanhood. And it made me change the way that, I don't know, I thought about the power of girlhood and how that has changed over time. And like something so core to Taylor Swift's art is her defense of her girlhood, wanting to protect the girl that she was and the woman that she has become. And so to see not just girls there though, like also lots of queer people really embracing femininity, dads with their daughters embracing the feminine. You love to see it, you know, and I felt that way about Beyonce's tour as well. It just, the celebration of women felt really powerful.
We'll say the just based on the number of tours that are out here this summer, the vibes have shifted a little bit, and I think like you know, and the Eras Tour is sort of landing in a slightly different place. But also, look, if you went to the show or if you've been watching the live streams or been paying attention to the conversation online, then you kind of know that there's a point in the night which you know the sort of Twitter fan accounts love to refer to as surprise song o'clock, which is a point in the show when she does something that is a little bit different from the rest of it. So each show includes one unpredictable part, and have a listen to this.
I said, how long could we be a sad song till we went too far gone? Bring back to life. I gave you all my best dreams, my endless empathy, and all I did was bleed. I tried to be a brave soldier.
I actually do want to cut it off because I want to continue singing the song. That is Taylor, I think night 6 singing "You're Losing Me" in Toronto. And it was not a song that anybody expected her to perform live. It was one of those songs that like she was so heartbroken. A song is such a heartbreak song that in my head I was like, she's never going to do this, you know, as part of the Eras Tour. Then she ends up doing it. Kyle, I want to bring you in here because this surprise song o'clock ritual essentially ends up being the thing that changes your life. You built an app called Swift Alert, which has like now been downloaded over 1 million times. It's an app that alerts people, when Taylor's performing certain songs, and also, hey, here are some live streams of the show so you can actually watch it. What compelled you to do that, Kyle? How does one go about being like, you know what the world needs is a Taylor Swift Alert app?
You know, so I mentioned earlier, my wife and I went to opening night, and I think the need for it became pretty clear after that. We were watching live streams, as I assume everyone does, right? After we went to opening night. Yeah. Just watching how the concerts changed every night, watching to see what the surprise songs would be, watching to see what new outfit she would break out. And as I'm watching those live streams, I'm seeing all these people in the chat from all over the world, right? It's someone from Australia or Japan or Poland, and they're saying, hey, what time is it in Chicago? I have no idea. Or what time does the rep set start? What time will the surprise songs be? And as I'm kind of watching this madness, I'm listening to a podcast with Nora Princiati every single album, and she just kind of casually mentions, wouldn't it be cool if there was an app that told you when things are happening in the Eras Tour? Because she's about to go international, and I don't know what the time zones are in all these other countries, and they don't know what the time zones are here.
And you're like, Nora, bet. Let's
exactly.
make that happen.
I was walking my dog when I listened to that podcast, and I have a little bit of a product background, and I was like, I think I could build that app, and I think it'd be really useful to me and probably to other Swifties like me. And within about an hour, I had sent Nora an email and said, hey, do you mind if I actually build this? And she was like, go for it. That'd be awesome. And by the end of the day, I had found an engineer who lived in Turkey who was willing to build a prototype for me, and we had it working a couple weeks after that. So it was a pretty quick turnaround from listening to a podcast on a walk with the dog and trying to put this thing out in the world.
That's genuinely extraordinary. But also, what's extraordinary to me is the ways that the live stream culture around this tour have evolved, because live streams are generally an accepted part of the internet. You know, you sort of go like, oh, sure, there will be some live streams around certain things that people really care about. Aisling, it's been a very organized and very intentional and very wild, frankly, culture of live streaming this tour. Like I say this as someone who last night was watching a live stream that had like 300,000 people watching it, and he was in the middle of the night, and people were sort of trying to pay attention to like, okay, what is she going to do tonight? Where is she going to make some kind of announcement? What do you make of the live stream culture around the Eras Tour? How do you think that has kind of changed the internet?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you can't really talk about the Eras Tour without the live streams. I mean, when you think about how many people weren't able to get tickets, I mean, obviously, I think, with the live streams, kind of the point of them is they're not very good. Like, they're definitely not the best way to experience a concert.
Yeah.
But if you weren't able to get tickets at all, I think they were a really accessible way for folks to be able to check in on their favorite eras and tune in for surprise songs, which just opened up the fandom to even more people, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like, Suzy, what's interesting to me is that, like, the way that people want to be there for the live stream is so they can talk about the choices that she made. Like, is there some kind of signal that is coming out of the choice that she made of surprise songs at night, which is, like, not unlike the way that people want to be there for a television show. That's not the way that concerts function. Like, concerts are not supposed to be television shows. You're not supposed to be like, wait a minute, it is Friday and the place I need to be is like on my phone because what time is it in Singapore right now? I need to figure out, what kind of surprise thing she's going to do tonight. So do you want to talk a little bit about like the ways that Taylor's maybe managed to make a tour that has had literally billions of dollars in sales feel like an intimate television show that you're watching in your own house? Like, how does a pop star go about even doing that?
I think it's by harnessing the parasocial relationship of it all. Like, one thing that Taylor is really good at is harnessing the fan community, keeping them engaged by making it feel personal. She draws on like a long-time tradition of women singer-songwriters who are confessional, bloodletting even. So every night is like a ritual of bloodletting for Taylor Swift. She is someone who's like very, like her music is intimate. And the last couple years in her life have been like a soap opera, and the way that it has unfolded like in the show, the way that the show has evolved along with her love life, Travis Kelce, like suddenly like being part of the show. Yeah. I didn't think in 2023 that was going to happen, but Taylor Swift comes from the Tumblr school of like radical vulnerability.
Yeah.
She was that girl, she was keeping a diary on Tumblr for like many years. And I think if you go way back, I remember her in 2014, like sharing photos of her in bed with her cats. Like, that's just such an essential part of Taylor's music, but also her relationship with the fans.
If folks are just joining us, my name is Alamin Abdul Mahmoud. This show is called Commotion, and today with Kyle Mumma and Aisling Murphing and Suzy Exposito, we're talking about the last day of the Eras Tour, which was last night, and now we just gotta like live without it. And I'm not really sure that I can figure out how to do that. Kyle, what's been the biggest revelation for you about the Swiftie community, you think, since you launched your app?
Yeah, we've had a chance to interact with millions of fans all over the world as we've done this. And, one thing we heard is what we were just talking about, which is, hey, I couldn't go to the show, couldn't get a ticket, too expensive. She didn't come to my country. Yeah. And all of those people expressing this joy of being able to still participate in the show, which was incredibly cool to see. So that, that live stream culture and the ability to make this a little bit more accessible was a really beautiful part of the tour. I think even beyond that, another step further, there's this clear desire for community and connection that we see where, we hear from people all the time. We created an app that alerts you about when things are happening in the Eras Tour, right? It was never meant to be like that serious, but we hear from people all the time who are like, I was really depressed and going through a really challenging period of my life, and this app and this game and this concert helped me to move past that depression. Or I'm going through a divorce, and being part of this tour and this community helped me to reconnect with my child. Or I'm going through chemotherapy for cancer treatment, and guessing what outfits Taylor was going to wear was the thing that got me out of bed in the morning. And that is like a really deep level of, I don't know, connection and community that we didn't intend to create. But clearly there's this need for people to find that in this world that's really isolated and online. And clearly Taylor is something that really creates that for folks, and we were fortunate to be part of it. So that kind of level of depth was not necessarily something that we intended, but was a really, really meaningful outcome of this for us.
Yeah, I think that there's something to me about this tour landing after the pandemic, Suzy, about, after the sort of like this intense period of isolation and not being able to connect with other people, where all of the desires for connection were sort of like, catapulted and put on and projected onto this tour. This tour becomes like the way that you kind of get there. And that's a really lovely, a really intimate sentiment, but also like it kind of bears out in the numbers, which if you can just bear with me for a moment, they're kind of wild. Like it's estimated this is like the total revenue of this tour is $2 billion. It's the first time that any tour has passed the $1 billion mark, let alone get to two of them. That's pretty wild. That makes Taylor Swift the first artist to become a billionaire on the basis of music alone. No makeup line, no fashion line. It's basically just the music. You have the Eras Tour movie, the most successful concert film of all time, and then also she was the most streamed artist by Spotify this year, 26 billion plays. It's pretty wild too. So much happened this tour that I think like when you kind of step back and think about it, you forget all of these little moments. Like there was a foiled attack plot on the show in Vienna. Last year, a fan died in Rio de Janeiro from heat exhaustion for one of the shows. Do moments like that make you stop and go, actually, like this tour was too big? It was not only was it it was not a normal music tour, but it was too big of a tour, and maybe we made this thing way bigger than it ever needed to be.
Yeah, I mean, the demand for Taylor is huge.
Yeah.
But it does give me pause. I feel like in the rush to become like the biggest tour in music history, Taylor set a bar that's super, super, like it's just super high. That uniquely applies to her. Yeah. And so I think at this moment, like, is there going to be someone in the future as big or bigger than Taylor Swift? It's possible, but at the same time, you have to think about the limits of live production, of having that many people in one place, whether the infrastructure is going to be the same across countries. Will the security be the same? These are like big questions that, I'm sure Live Nation is working on how to properly produce events of this caliber, at least in like North America. But the concert industry globally had to catch up to Taylor Swift and her fans.
Yeah. And catch up, I'm not sure they even have done so yet, but like that is sort of like, that becomes like the next kind of step here. Look, Ashley, I want to maybe leave it here. We've been talking about the many ways that Swifties have sort of expressed fandom. There's the live streams, there's tailgating parties, there's the friendship bracelets. But I want to maybe play you something that does speak to the intensity of the fandom. I know you can't tell really what that is, except for it's just a large crowd singing. But that is a crowd from the audience in Vienna after the shows were canceled because of that foiled terror attack plot. Shows canceled, thousands of people singing in the street. As you hear that, kind of look back at the end of the Eras Tour, how are you feeling about this journey that we've been on? Do you already feel the withdrawal kicking in? How are you relating to it?
Man, I mean, I remember seeing TikToks of those moments in Vienna and just kind of weeping. I mean, again, like I can't think of another fandom who there was a fairly legitimate threat on their lives in Vienna. Like that was really, really scary. Yeah. And their answer to that was to storm the streets of Vienna and sing Taylor Swift in the most loving, safe, and just totally wonderful way. Yeah. In a lot of ways, I do sort of feel like maybe it's time for the Eras Tour to be over. As we got to the end of the tour, I did feel like cities were sort of trying to compete with each other for who could lay out the most lavish welcome for Taylor Swift. In Toronto, we're seeing encampments moved to make way for Taylor Swift. And it's like, okay, if we can do that when Taylor Swift's in town, can we maybe provide resources when she's not too? Like that feels like maybe absolutely a great next step for that.
Ashley, I got to stop you there because I'm actually literally running out of time. So we're going to say goodbye to our radio audience and then we'll kind of wrap up this conversation in just a moment. But Ashley Murphy and Suzy Exposito and Kyle Mumma, I appreciate you guys being here. This show is called Commotion. My name is Alameen Abdul.